What if one of the most powerful anti-aging tools in your entire body isn't a supplement, not a medication, not even a workout program, but a microscopic organism living inside your gut right now? Here's what's really going on inside your body. As we age, most people think the problem starts in the skin, the joints, the brain, or the heart. They assume aging is simply wear and tear. But modern research is revealing something far more profound. One of the central control systems of aging may actually begin in the gut microbiome. The trillions of bacteria that regulate inflammation, metabolism, immune health, hormone signaling, and even how your brain functions. And among these microbes, one bacterium has been attracting enormous scientific attention. Akkermansia mucinifila. This may sound like a complicated scientific name, but this bacterium is becoming one of the most important discoveries in longevity research. Studies are now linking healthy levels of Akkermansia to improved metabolism, reduced inflammation, healthier body weight, stronger gut lining integrity, better insulin sensitivity, healthier aging, and even protection against neurodegenerative diseases. And here's the fascinating part. People who live exceptionally long lives, including some centenarians, often have gut microbiomes that look biologically younger than their actual age. Researchers are discovering that beneficial bacteria like Akkermansia may play a major role in that resilience. Now, this does not mean one bacteria magically kills disease. We need to be scientifically accurate here. The body is far more complex than that. But what the research strongly suggests is this. When your gut microbiome shifts in the right direction, your entire internal environment changes. Inflammation decreases. Blood sugar stabilizes. The gut barrier strengthens. Fat metabolism improves. Immune signaling becomes more balanced. And your cells operate in a way that supports healthy aging instead of accelerated decline. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your gut like a rainforest ecosystem. When the beneficial organisms are thriving, the environment stays balanced and resilient. But when poor diet, stress, ultra-processed foods, sleep deprivation, alcohol excess, antibiotics, and chronic inflammation damage that ecosystem, harmful bacteria begin taking over. And once that happens, the body starts aging faster. Energy drops. Cravings increase. Fat accumulates more easily. Brain fog appears, inflammation rises, the immune system becomes dysregulated. So today we're going to break down exactly how this gut bacteria works, what foods help it grow naturally, what destroys it, and how you can create an internal environment that supports longevity from the inside out. And some of these strategies are surprisingly simple. You'll learn why certain fibers act like fertilizer for longevity bacteria, why polyphenol-rich foods may be more powerful than people realize, how fasting changes the microbiome, and why your gut lining may be one of the most overlooked anti-aging systems in your body. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post evidence-based content like this every day to help you optimize your health naturally. The first thing we need to understand is that aging is not just about getting older. Biologically, aging is heavily connected to chronic inflammation. Scientists sometimes call this inflammaging, low-grade inflammation that slowly damages tissues year after year. And one of the biggest drivers of this inflammation may begin in the gut. Here's what's really happening. Inside your intestines is a protective mucus lining, almost like a biological shield between the outside world and your bloodstream. Akkermansia muciniphila specializes in interacting with this mucus layer. In healthy amounts, it helps maintain and strengthen this barrier. Now let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine the gut lining like the walls of a castle. If the walls stay strong, harmful invaders stay outside. But if the walls become damaged or leaky, inflammatory compounds, toxins, and bacterial fragments can enter the bloodstream. The immune system then reacts constantly, almost like a fire alarm that never turns off. Over time, this contributes to insulin resistance, weight gain, liver stress, brain inflammation, fatigue, and accelerated aging. This is why the gut is now considered central to metabolic health. And what's fascinating is that Akkermansia appears to help maintain that protective barrier. Research published in recent years has connected this bacterium with healthier metabolic function, improved insulin sensitivity, reduced obesity-related inflammation, and healthier aging markers. Some studies even suggest it may influence GLP-1 signaling, the same appetite-regulating pathway targeted by popular weight loss medications. Now, this doesn't mean you need expensive probiotics immediately, because one of the most powerful ways to increase beneficial gut bacteria is through food. Akkermansia thrives in environments rich in plant diversity, fiber, and polyphenols. That means foods like pomegranates, berries, green tea, cranberries, garlic, onions, leeks, beans, lentils, oats, flax seeds, walnuts, dark leafy greens. These foods contain compounds your body cannot fully digest on its own, but your gut bacteria can. And when these microbes ferment fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate and propionate, compounds strongly linked to reduced inflammation and healthier aging. This is one reason why ultra-processed foods create so many problems. Processed foods are often low in fiber and high in inflammatory additives, refined sugars, and damaged fats. In other words, they starve beneficial bacteria while feeding inflammatory pathways. So the first protocol is very simple. Start feeding your microbiome intentionally. Aim for at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber daily. Try to eat 20 to 30 different plant foods per week. Add polyphenol-rich foods consistently. And reduce ultra-processed foods aggressively. Even small changes matter. 1 extra serving of beans, 1 cup of green tea, 1 bowl of berries. These are not just healthy foods. They are biological instructions to your microbiome. And your microbiome then sends instructions back to the rest of your body. If this is helping you understand your health differently, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Because most people are treating symptoms while ignoring the ecosystem driving those symptoms in the first place. One of the biggest misunderstandings in modern health is that metabolism is controlled only by calories. But metabolism is really an information system. Your body is constantly receiving signals from hormones, nutrients, stress, sleep, movement, and surprisingly, from gut bacteria. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your microbiome communicates directly with your immune system, your liver, your brain, and even your fat cells. Scientists now call this the gut-organ axis. There's a gut-brain axis, a gut-liver axis, even a gut-muscle axis. And when beneficial bacteria decline, those communication systems begin malfunctioning. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your gut bacteria like the software engineers inside a massive factory. The factory is your metabolism. When the engineers are working properly, energy production stays efficient. Insulin signaling stays balanced. Inflammation remains controlled. Fat gets burned appropriately. Hormones stay coordinated. But when harmful bacteria dominate the system, it's like corrupted software entering the factory. Signals become distorted. The body starts storing more fat. Blood sugar regulation weakens. Cravings intensify. Energy production becomes unstable. And inflammation quietly rises in the background. This is why 2 people can eat the exact same meal and have completely different metabolic responses. Their microbiomes are different. Research now shows that lower levels of Akkermansia are frequently associated with obesity, insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes. Meanwhile, healthier levels are associated with improved metabolic flexibility and reduced inflammation. PubMed NCBI and LMNI.gov, and this becomes especially important as we age, because aging naturally reduces microbial diversity if we don't actively protect it. The modern lifestyle accelerates this decline dramatically. Low-fiber diets, constant snacking, excess sugar, poor sleep, chronic stress, alcohol overuse, frequent antibiotics, sedentary behavior. All of these damage microbial diversity over time. Now here's the fascinating part. One of the ways beneficial bacteria help your metabolism is through the production of short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate. Butyrate acts almost like fuel for your intestinal cells. It helps maintain gut barrier integrity. It reduces inflammatory signaling. It improves insulin sensitivity. And some evidence suggests it may even support mitochondrial health, your cellular energy factories. This is critical because mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the hallmarks of aging. In simple terms, healthy bacteria help your cells produce energy more efficiently, and unhealthy microbiomes push the body toward inflammation and metabolic chaos. So what can you do practically? First, stop thinking only about calories. Start thinking about feeding the right microbes. One of the most powerful tools is resistant starch. Resistant starch is a type of carbohydrate that bypasses digestion and feeds beneficial bacteria in the colon. Foods rich in resistant starch include cooked and cooled potatoes, cooked and cooled rice, green bananas, beans and lentils, oats, chickpeas. These foods act like fertilizer for beneficial bacteria. And interestingly, when bacteria ferment resistant starch, the body often becomes more insulin sensitive over time. This is why traditional cultures eating fiber-rich diets historically had far lower rates of metabolic disease than modern industrialized populations. Now let's talk about polyphenols. Polyphenols are natural plant compounds that act almost like protective chemicals in foods, but your gut bacteria transform them into even more beneficial compounds. Foods especially rich in microbiome-supportive polyphenols include blueberries, blackberries, pomegranate, green tea, Cocoa, olive oil, red cabbage, herbs and spices. Research suggests polyphenols may help increase Akkermansia abundance while simultaneously lowering oxidative stress and inflammation. Frontiers.org. Now notice something important here. Nature rarely works through isolated compounds alone. It works through systems. Fiber plus polyphenols plus movement plus sleep plus fasting all work together to shape the microbiome ecosystem. And this is why extreme approaches often fail long term. The body thrives on consistency, diversity, and rhythm. So here's a practical daily protocol you can start implementing immediately. Begin your morning with green tea or black coffee without sugar. Add berries or chia seeds to breakfast. Include beans, lentils, or vegetables at lunch. Aim for at least one fermented food daily: yogurt, kefir, kimchi, or sauerkraut. Use olive oil generously. And stop eating at least 2-3 hours before bed. These are small actions, but biologically they create massive signaling effects inside the body because every meal is either feeding inflammation or feeding resilience. And the exciting part is this: your microbiome can begin shifting surprisingly quickly when you consistently change the environment. Now let's talk about something most people never connect to aging: your gut lining. Because one of the fastest ways the body ages is when the gut barrier begins breaking down. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your digestive tract is technically outside your body until nutrients pass through the intestinal barrier into the bloodstream. That barrier has to be highly selective. It must allow nutrients in, but keep harmful compounds out. When this barrier becomes damaged, often called increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut, inflammatory molecules begin entering circulation more easily. And once that happens, the immune system becomes chronically activated. Think about it like this. Imagine your house has a roof with tiny leaks. At first, you barely notice. But over months and years, water damage spreads everywhere: the walls, the floors, the wiring. That's similar to what chronic gut barrier dysfunction can do biologically. Small inflammatory insults accumulate over time, and eventually they affect the brain, the liver, the arteries, the joints, the skin, and the metabolic system. Research increasingly links gut permeability with obesity, insulin resistance, autoimmune conditions, neurodegeneration, and accelerated biological aging. Nature.com? And this is where Akkermansia becomes especially important. This bacterium lives close to the mucus layer of the intestines and appears to help regulate the integrity of that barrier. In healthy amounts, it may strengthen mucus production and support tight junction proteins, the microscopic structures that hold intestinal cells together. Frontiers.org. In other words, beneficial bacteria help reinforce the body's internal defenses. Now let me explain this with a whiteboard-style visual. Picture your gut lining like a brick wall. The intestinal cells are the bricks. The tight junctions are the mortar holding the bricks together. Inflammation, processed foods, alcohol excess, chronic stress, poor sleep, and certain medications can weaken that mortar. When gaps appear, inflammatory particles leak through, and your immune system reacts aggressively. This is why some people feel exhausted, inflamed, bloated, foggy, or metabolically stuck even when standard lab tests look normal. The inflammation may be low-grade, chronic, and originating from the gut. Now here's the encouraging part. The gut lining can repair itself remarkably well when the environment improves. And one of the most powerful tools for this is fiber. Most people think fiber is only about digestion. It's not. Fiber is one of the primary fuels for beneficial bacteria. When bacteria ferment fiber, they create short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate, which directly nourish intestinal cells and help maintain barrier integrity. This is why low-fiber diets are so damaging long-term. They literally starve the microbes that help protect the gut lining. Now let's make this practical. If someone wants to strengthen gut integrity and support longevity bacteria, here are some of the most effective foods: beans and lentils, artichokes, asparagus, leeks, onions, garlic, oats, flax seeds, chia seeds, apples, berries, cruciferous vegetables. These foods provide prebiotic fibers that beneficial microbes thrive on. Fermented foods are also important because they introduce helpful microbial compounds into the gut ecosystem. Foods like plain yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, tempeh, and interestingly, research suggests diversity matters more than perfection. Many people obsess over one superfood, but the microbiome thrives on variety. Different bacteria prefer different fibers. So the broader your plant diversity, the more resilient your internal ecosystem becomes. A great target is 30 different plant foods per week. That includes herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains. Now let's talk about one of the biggest destroyers of gut integrity: constant eating. Most people never give their digestive system a break. From morning until late night, insulin stays elevated, digestion never stops, and the microbiome loses its natural rhythm. Time-restricted eating can help. Even a simple 12 to 14-hour overnight fasting window may support microbial balance and metabolic recovery. For example, finish dinner at 7 p.m., eat breakfast at 8 or 9 a.m. That simple timing shift may help reduce inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and support healthier gut signaling. And here's something important. You do not need perfection. The microbiome responds to patterns. What you repeatedly do matters far more than occasional mistakes. If this is helping you rethink aging and health from the inside out, consider subscribing. Every day I share science-backed strategies to help you optimize your metabolism, energy, and longevity naturally. Now we need to talk about one of the most underestimated drivers of gut damage and accelerated aging, chronic stress. Because your microbiome is not influenced only by food. It is listening to your nervous system every single day. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When you live under chronic stress, your body produces elevated levels of cortisol and adrenaline. In short bursts, this is normal and protective. But when stress becomes constant, the body shifts into survival mode. Blood flow changes, digestion slows, inflammation rises, sleep quality declines, blood sugar becomes more unstable, and the gut microbiome begins to change. Researchers now know there is constant two-way communication between the brain and the gut, what scientists call the gut-brain axis. Your emotional state influences your microbiome, and your microbiome influences your emotional state. This is why chronic stress can trigger digestive symptoms. And it's also why poor gut health can contribute to anxiety, fatigue, low mood, and brain fog. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your nervous system like the conductor of an orchestra. When the conductor is calm and coordinated, every section works together smoothly. But when the conductor becomes chaotic, the entire orchestra loses rhythm. That's what chronic stress does to the body. It disrupts timing, signaling, repair, recovery, digestion, and microbial balance all at once. And one of the major casualties is microbial diversity. Studies show chronic psychological stress is associated with lower levels of beneficial bacteria and increased inflammatory activity in the gut. NCB&L This matters enormously for aging because inflammation and stress reinforce each other. Stress damages the microbiome. A damaged microbiome increases inflammation. Inflammation worsens stress resilience, and the cycle continues. Now here's the fascinating part. Some beneficial bacteria may actually help regulate stress responses. Emerging research suggests healthy microbiomes can influence neurotransmitters like serotonin, GABA, and dopamine, chemicals deeply involved in mood, focus, and emotional regulation. Frontiers.org. In fact, about 90% of serotonin production is connected to the gut environment. That doesn't mean gut bacteria magically control emotions, but it does show how deeply connected these systems are. Now let's make this practical. One of the fastest ways to improve microbial health is improving sleep. Poor sleep rapidly alters insulin sensitivity, increases hunger hormones, raises cortisol, and negatively impacts gut bacteria. Even a few nights of sleep deprivation can increase inflammatory signaling significantly. So if someone is eating healthy, but sleeping 5 hours a night, they are fighting against their biology. A practical target is 5 to 9 hours of sleep, consistent sleep and wake times, reduce screen exposure before bed, cool, dark sleeping environments, and avoiding heavy meals late at night. Because during deep sleep, the body enters repair mode. Hormones rebalance, inflammation decreases, the gut barrier repairs, and the microbiome follows circadian rhythms tied to sleep timing. Now let's talk about movement. Exercise is one of the most powerful microbiome modulators available, and you do not need extreme workouts. Moderate, consistent movement improves insulin sensitivity, circulation, mitochondrial health, and microbial diversity. Studies show physically active individuals often have more diverse microbiomes than sedentary individuals. Nature.com? Why? Because movement changes the entire internal environment. It improves blood flow to the gut, reduces inflammatory signaling, improves glucose handling, and supports beneficial bacterial growth. The key is consistency. Walking after meals, resistance training 2 to 4 times weekly, daily movement, mobility work, even gardening and light activity matter. Remember, the body evolved expecting movement, and the microbiome evolved alongside that movement. Now here's another overlooked factor: nature exposure. Research suggests spending time outdoors, especially around soil, plants, and natural environments, may positively influence microbial diversity and immune regulation. Modern sterile indoor living may actually reduce some beneficial environmental microbial exposures. So practical protocols here include morning sunlight exposure. Daily walks outdoors, stress reduction practices, breath work, prayer or meditation, social connection, regular movement, consistent sleep. Because longevity is not built from one miracle supplement. It's built from creating an internal environment where the body can repair and regulate itself efficiently, and the microbiome sits right at the center of that environment. Now let's talk about the foods and habits silently destroying the very bacteria that protect you from aging and disease. Because this is where many people unknowingly sabotage their health every single day. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your microbiome is alive. It changes constantly based on the environment you create. Every meal, every night of sleep, every stressful week, every medication, every drink of alcohol, all of these act like votes shaping your internal ecosystem. And unfortunately, the modern lifestyle is highly inflammatory to gut bacteria. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to grow a healthy garden. If you constantly dump chemicals into the soil, never water the plants properly, and strip away nutrients, eventually the healthy plants die off and weeds take over. That is exactly what happens inside the gut. Beneficial bacteria decline. Inflammatory organisms expand, the gut lining weakens, and metabolic dysfunction begins accelerating beneath the surface. One of the biggest drivers of this process is ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed foods are typically stripped of natural fiber and loaded with refined carbohydrates, industrial oils, additives, emulsifiers, and excess sugar. From the perspective of the microbiome, this creates two major problems at once. First, beneficial bacteria become starved because they depend on fiber and plant compounds for fuel. Second, inflammatory pathways become activated. Research increasingly shows that diets high in ultra-processed foods are associated with reduced microbial diversity and greater inflammation. BMJ.com. And diversity matters. A diverse microbiome is generally more resilient, adaptable, and metabolically healthy. A damaged microbiome becomes fragile and inflammatory. Now let's talk specifically about sugar. Excess sugar intake does not simply affect body weight. It affects microbial balance. Highly refined sugar can encourage the overgrowth of less beneficial organisms while increasing insulin spikes and inflammatory signaling. And chronically elevated insulin is deeply connected to accelerated aging, because insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone. It is also a storage hormone. When insulin remains elevated constantly through frequent eating and refined foods, the body shifts toward fat storage and away from repair processes. This is one reason metabolic disease and aging are so closely connected. Now, another major disruptor is alcohol excess. Occasional moderate intake is different from chronic overconsumption, but regular heavy alcohol intake can damage the gut lining, increase permeability, alter microbial composition, and elevate inflammation significantly. The same is true for chronic sleep deprivation. And this becomes extremely important because many people focus only on supplements while ignoring the behaviors damaging their biology every day. Now let's talk about antibiotics. Antibiotics can absolutely be life-saving when medically necessary, but overuse can dramatically disrupt the microbiome. Some beneficial bacterial populations may take months to recover. This is why unnecessary antibiotic exposure should be avoided whenever appropriate under medical guidance. After antibiotics, rebuilding the microbiome becomes especially important through fiber-rich foods, fermented foods, polyphenol-rich plants, sleep optimization, and reduced inflammatory food intake. Now here's something fascinating the research is beginning to reveal. Even artificial sweeteners may negatively alter glucose responses and microbial balance in some individuals. Nature.com? This doesn't mean every person responds identically, but it reinforces an important principle. The body responds best to real food, not hyper-engineered chemical substitutes pretending to be food. So what does a microbiome-supportive day actually look like? It can be surprisingly simple. Breakfast: plain yogurt or kefir with berries, flax seeds, walnuts, and cinnamon. Lunch: large salad with olive oil, beans, colorful vegetables, herbs, and protein. Snack: green tea and a handful of nuts. Dinner: salmon or legumes with cruciferous vegetables, garlic, onions, and cooked cooled potatoes or lentils. And most importantly, avoid constant snacking late into the evening. Give your gut time to rest and repair. Now notice something important. None of this is extreme. This is not about perfection. It is about consistently creating an anti-inflammatory internal environment. And over time, your microbiome begins rewarding those choices. Inflammation lowers, energy improves, cravings decrease, blood sugar stabilizes, mental clarity sharpens, and the body becomes biologically more resilient. If this is helping you understand how deeply food influences aging, consider subscribing and liking the video. Every day I share practical science-based strategies to help you optimize your metabolism and longevity naturally. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Today we explored how one tiny group of organisms inside your gut may profoundly influence aging, inflammation, metabolism, immunity, and long-term health. And the key insight is this: your microbiome is not separate from your health. It is deeply connected to nearly every major system in your body. When beneficial bacteria like Akkermansia mucinifera thrive, the body tends to become more resilient. The gut lining strengthens, inflammation decreases, blood sugar regulation improves, metabolic health becomes more stable. And many of the biological processes associated with accelerated aging begin moving in a healthier direction. But when the microbiome becomes damaged through ultra-processed foods, chronic stress, sleep deprivation, excess sugar, inactivity, and constant eating, the opposite often occurs. Inflammation rises, energy drops, fat accumulation becomes easier, insulin resistance worsens, and the body starts aging faster from the inside out. Now, the encouraging part is that many of the most powerful microbiome-supporting interventions are completely accessible. Fiber-rich whole foods, beans and lentils, berries, green tea, olive oil, fermented foods, better sleep, daily movement, stress reduction, time-restricted eating, consistency, not perfection. Because every single day, your choices are shaping the ecosystem inside your body, and that ecosystem is shaping you in return. So here's the challenge I want to leave you with. Choose just one microbiome supportive habit from today's video and implement it consistently for the next 7 days. Maybe it's replacing processed snacks with fiber-rich foods. Maybe it's walking after dinner. Maybe it's adding fermented foods daily. Maybe it's stopping late-night eating. Don't underestimate small changes. Tiny daily inputs can create massive biological shifts over time. And remember, healthy aging is not about trying to stop time. It's about improving how your body functions as time passes. That is the real goal. More energy, better focus, stronger metabolism, lower inflammation, greater resilience, and a body that supports the life you want to live. If this video added value to your health journey, like the video and subscribe to join others optimizing their health naturally through science-backed strategies. And as always, listen to your body, stay consistent, and keep investing in your long-term health. Because the choices you make today are shaping the biology you live in tomorrow.